The diner smelled of fried onions and stale coffee, a combination that somehow always made the air feel alive. He walked in without really noticing the rain outside, his mind elsewhere, tangled in spreadsheets, deals, and the endless noise of his life. But then his eyes caught her, a young woman moving with precise grace, balancing plates as if the world depended on it. There was a scar along her cheek, thin but unmistakable, curving just below her right eye. It was subtle, yet it struck him like a lightning bolt he didn't see coming. He froze, his hand still on the door, a strange mix of disbelief and something heavier, older, aching. She laughed at a customer's joke, the sound bright and natural, carrying across the room. He had to look again. It couldn't be. The scar, the posture, the way she moved. It was her. His sister. His long-lost sister who had vanished over 20 years ago. Memories surged, unbidden, like a storm breaking through a window. He remembered the day she disappeared, the tears, the police reports, the empty house that refused to feel like home. And now she was here, in front of him, as if life had conspired to put her in a diner rather than a boardroom, far from the luxury he had grown used to. Her eyes flicked to him, noticing him only now, but he dared not approach too quickly. It had been so long, and he wasn't sure she would even recognize him, or worse, care to. His chest tightened. 20 years of wondering, searching, hoping, and now a single glance held decades of unspoken words. He watched as she wiped the counter, her hands moving deftly, a rhythm that suggested discipline and resilience. She had survived, that much was clear. And yet, the scar hinted at a story he didn't know. A pain she had carried silently, alone. A customer left a tip, and she bent to pick it up, catching his gaze for just a fraction of a second. Her eyes widened subtly, curiosity flickering into caution. He knew she sensed something familiar, something stirring beneath the ordinary afternoon chaos. The room felt smaller suddenly, every laugh, every clatter of silverware echoing loudly in his ears. He wanted to speak, but words stuck like stones in his throat. Instead, he just stood there, torn between revelation and fear, unsure how to bridge 2 decades in a single moment. She approached a table, placing down a steaming plate of food, and for a second, the light caught her face perfectly. That scar, that face, everything was unmistakable. Recognition hovered on the edge, fragile and tentative. His heart pounded with anticipation and dread all at once. He finally stepped forward, clearing his throat softly, careful not to startle her. She looked up, eyes narrowing slightly, a professional instinct meeting something deeper, something she couldn't yet name. He opened his mouth, but the words came out uneven, trembling. "Lila?" he whispered, voice almost breaking. Her hands froze mid-motion, the plate balancing for a second too long. She stared at him, the name unfamiliar but echoing, resonating somewhere deep inside her memory. Her lips parted slightly, a hesitant sound escaping. I don't think I know you," she said, voice cautious, measured. Her tone suggested she had learned to guard herself, a survival skill honed over countless lonely years. "No, you do," he said quickly, voice low but urgent. "It's me. It's Daniel, your brother. I've been searching for you for years." He stepped closer, but not too close, giving her space, while his eyes pleaded silently for recognition. Lila blinked rapidly, a mixture of disbelief and fear washing over her features. Memories of a childhood she thought she had buried surfaced abruptly, unbidden. A younger brother, laughter, arguments, and then the void. The gap of years yawned between them. "Daniel," she breathed, the name tasting foreign yet familiar on her tongue. Her hands trembled slightly, dropping the plate onto the table with a soft clatter. The diner seemed to hush around them, as if even the background noise was holding its breath. He smiled faintly, relief softening his features though anxiety remained. I found you, he said simply. After all this time, I finally found you. There was hope, yes, but also an unspoken apology for the lost years, for the moments they had missed. She shook her head, trying to ground herself. I don't know what to say, she admitted, voice catching. Her eyes searched his, wary, assessing, as if trying to measure the truth in his expression. You don't have to say anything yet, Daniel replied gently. I just needed you to know. It's me. I'm here now. His words hung in the air, a lifeline, an invitation to bridge the years. The diner felt suspended in time. Every movement slowed, every sound faded, until it was just the two of them, brother and sister, staring across a space filled with the weight of decades. The past was heavy, but the present offered a chance, fragile yet real. Lila's gaze softened imperceptibly, a crack appearing in the wall she had built around herself. Could she let him in? Could she trust that the world hadn't broken him, just as it had hardened her? He stepped a little closer, careful to remain respectful, allowing her to take the lead. I've dreamed of this moment, he said quietly, but I'll wait until you're ready. I'll wait as long as it takes. Her lips trembled, a shiver of emotion passing through her. The scar on her cheek glinted under the diner lights, a reminder of pain endured, but also of survival, resilience, and strength. Daniel reached out his hand slowly, palm open, offering her a bridge between the past and the present. She hesitated, eyes scanning his face, the familiar features that had grown into the man he was now. Finally, after a long, tense moment, she placed her hand lightly on his. It was tentative, delicate, yet it was enough. Recognition had taken hold, fragile but undeniable. Her voice was barely audible, but steady. I think I remember, she whispered. The words hung in the air like a promise, fragile yet filled with weight. Daniel's eyes glimmered with unshed tears, hope mixing with disbelief. Then we have a lot to catch up on, he said softly, smiling. A hush settled over the diner once more, unnoticed by the patrons engrossed in their meals. The world had narrowed to two people, two hearts mending, and a single, quiet moment of reunion. The rain outside slowed to a drizzle, the clouds breaking slightly to let shafts of light illuminate the room. And in that light, Daniel and Lila sat together, hands entwined, rediscovering what had been lost, quietly beginning again. Days passed, but Daniel didn't want to leave the diner without seeing Lila again. He returned, hesitating at the door, heart pounding like the first time he had seen her. She was there, wiping down tables, unaware of how her presence had shifted the course of his entire life. When she noticed him, her eyes flickered with cautious recognition, mingled with that familiar wariness she had worn like armor. Daniel smiled gently, offering a small nod, a silent plea for trust. She hesitated and gave the tiniest of nods in return. He slid into the booth across from her, careful not to startle her. I brought something, he said quietly, pulling a faded photograph from his pocket. Lila's eyes widened when she saw it, a childhood memory captured in sepia tones. That's us, he whispered, pointing to the figures in the picture, a younger Daniel, a younger Lila, their parents smiling behind them. Her lips trembled. I remember this, she said softly, voice barely audible. Her hands shook as she reached for the photo, tracing the image with delicate fingers. The scar on her cheek seemed less like a mark of pain now and more like a reminder of survival. Daniel watched her carefully, afraid any sudden move might shatter this fragile connection. I've thought about you every day, he said quietly, voice catching in his throat. Every birthday, every holiday, I wondered where you were, if you were okay. If you missed me, even a little. Her breath hitched, a lump forming in her throat. I thought I'd never see you again, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I wondered if you even remembered me. Daniel shook his head, a soft smile tugging at his lips. "I could never forget you." Not for a single moment. The words were simple, yet they carried decades of longing and heartache. For the first time in years, Leela let herself breathe. The tension in her shoulders eased, her guard slowly lowering. She realized that despite the years, despite the pain, her brother had found her. They talked for hours, sharing fragmented memories, stories of survival, and quiet confessions. Lila spoke of the years she had spent learning to fend for herself, while Daniel recounted his search, the sleepless nights, and the endless hope that he might find her alive. Outside, the rain had stopped completely, leaving the streets wet and reflective. The diner felt like a cocoon, a small sanctuary where two souls could reconnect without the chaos of the outside world intruding. By the end of the day, they were no longer strangers. They were siblings again, bonded not just by blood, but by the shared scars of time and the joy of reunion. Daniel left the diner with a promise to return, knowing that Lila's trust would grow with patience and care. Weeks turned into months, and Daniel helped Lila step into a life she had never imagined. He introduced her to the world she had been denied, always careful to respect her independence, her strength, and her pace. Lila, in turn, taught Daniel humility and resilience. She showed him the beauty in ordinary moments, in the quiet strength of surviving, in the grace of moving forward despite the pain of the past. One evening, as the diner's neon sign flickered to life, Daniel and Lila stood together, looking out at the city they now shared. Their hands brushed, a subtle connection, a reminder that no matter what had happened, they had found each other again. "I never thought this day would come," Lila admitted softly, voice tinged with awe. "I didn't believe in happy endings." Daniel smiled, eyes glistening with emotion. "Sometimes they take their time, but they do come." He squeezed her hand gently, a promise and a comfort all in one gesture. Years of searching, years of longing, and all the lost time were nothing compared to this moment, standing side by side, finally whole again. The scars of the past remained, but they no longer defined them. Their reunion became a story that friends and family would later talk about in hushed, reverent tones. A tale of resilience, of fate, and of the enduring bonds of family that even time could not sever. Leela's life shifted, but not because of wealth or status. She gained a brother, a confidant, and a family she had thought lost forever. And Daniel learned that success meant little without those you love most by your side. Together, they began rebuilding a life that had been paused for decades. Small steps, careful conversations, and moments of laughter and tears marked their journey back to each other. The diner remained their sanctuary, a place where they first saw each other and where their bond strengthened quietly, surrounded by the ordinary life that suddenly felt extraordinary. Every time Daniel looked at Lila, he remembered that scar, the sign of survival, courage, and the life they had both endured. And every time Lila saw him, she felt the warmth of being truly found, truly seen. Their reunion became more than a memory. It became the foundation for a shared future, a reminder that some losses are temporary, that some bonds endure, and that the heart always remembers where it belongs. Years later, they would look back on that day in the diner as the moment everything changed. The moment that reminded them that even after decades of separation, life still has a way of bringing people home. And in that quiet, unassuming diner, two siblings sat together, scarred yet stronger, separated yet reunited, and finally whole.